Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Stanford Center on China's Economy and Institutions, also known as SCCEI, for our faculty and friends meet and greet. Today's goal is to share more background with you about our center and introduce you to our research areas and some of our faculty affiliates. We will be holding a formal launch event once we can all be in person, and we invite you all to attend that in hopefully the near future. Today's event will be led by SCCEI co-directors Hongbin Li and Scott Rosell. They will briefly introduce the center and our team before moving into the meat of the meeting by sharing more of our flagship research initiatives and conducting mini Q&A sessions with some of our faculty affiliates about their future and current research plans. And with that, I will pass it over to Hongbin Li to kick us off by articulating the need for a center like SCCEI.
Yes, thanks, Heather. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's, we call it informal get-together, meet and greet. So Scott and I have talked to many of you, if not all, in the past 2 or 3 years before we launched the center. I think you all know something about the center, but now the center is launched, the SCCEI is up. So we thought it might be helpful to use this opportunity to report back to you. So that's why we have this informal get-together before the formal launch after the pandemic. We are really actually optimistic. Now let me talk a little bit about SCCEI. So China now has the world's second largest economy. Many people predict sometime in the next decade or 2 decades, China may surpass the US, become the largest economy in the world. So if China grows, we know that 1.4 billion people there will benefit from it. The world also benefits from it. If China stops growing, we don't know what's going to happen. China also has many unique institutions, which are the fundamental reasons for why China is China today. China's relationship with the world is also very important for the world's growth, for the US too. A growing China will be fueling the growth of the world. Stagnant China or declining China will have a large negative impact, not only on Chinese, but also on the world economy. No matter what, either way, China will have important political and social consequences to the world. Although China is so important, unfortunately, today's world knows so little about China. At the moment, there are so many gaping holes in our knowledge about China. If we compare today's China to Soviet Union during the Cold War, there were so many economists in top US economic departments focused on researching and studying the Soviet economy. But today, there are so few economists in the top US econ department studying China's economy. So none of this is funded by the government. So because this, what's our role? So SCCEI will try to work to fill the knowledge gap. There will be a huge need for both data and high quality empirical research on China's economy. We not only need to understand the working issues of the economy, but also need to know better about the most important institutions that shape China's economy today. These issues will influence policymakers and the business community, not only in China, in the US, but also in the whole world. With this, let me give this stage to Scott, who will going to talk about what SCCEI is.
Thanks, Hongbin, and thank you everyone for coming here. Right, what is SCCEI? Right? Oh my gosh, you know, we really did start. I think we talked to Grant Miller 2.5 years ago about how to start this center, and I told Prashant that it was going to be up and running, you know, right away, and it's, you know, it's taken a long time, and just to get our name SCCEI, you had to get all those letters in the right order. It's been a real challenge, but we're there, and It's my impatience and Hongbin's patience, I think, put together is helped us do it. And also our entire REAP staff. We're going to introduce them. One of the big purposes of today is to show everyone the Heather Rahimis and Alexis's and Maps. And some of you know them, some of you don't. And hopefully when we interact in the future. So our mission, so every time we talk, we're going to say empirical, 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 right? We want this to be an empirical center, okay, based on, high quality research, multidisciplinary on contemporary China. So contemporary Chinese economy, its impact on the world, like Hongbin said, and empirical research that's going to create high quality information on China, so that we can give to the rest of the world. Yep, multidisciplinary, right? Economics. No. We want some political scientists here. We want some sociologists, some communication people, a few public health peoples here and there, education. But because we do really want to have a very broad, it's Stanford Center on China's economy and institutions, all those institutions that make this economy, what China is, right? Like Hongbin said. And, so we're really, we're trying to go across campus. So the first, especially now, as our Stanford faculty knows, it's hard to, expand and bring new faculty in. We want to bring new faculty in over time. That's our real huge, we want to have a big, vibrant center with a lot of people working here. But we have, our first goal is to build this foundation so you guys can come and, we can interact more and increase the quality of your work, or at least have it spill over onto us. We're going to collect policy centers that are addressing issues that don't have an empirical basis. We want to connect with Barry Naughton, right, down in San Diego. We want to connect with the USC guys. We want to serve with the China program at Stanford over in APARC. They have a big empirical base, but they also do a lot of the real policy issues that need to be done. Those are going to be our partners on this. And so the other thing we want to do is make sure we connect with people outside Stanford, right? Today, at least you guys, I can't see who's here, but, the Zhang Xiaobo's, Ray Shiz, David Young, Sean Sylvia, Ann Weber, Gan Li. We hope that we build very close connections with Southwest University of Finance and Economics, and Christopher Thomas with the bank and the School of Education. We really want to build those relationships. We also need to work with China, like with Sufi and others. Hongbin and I know, I think everybody who works on China, our challenge over the next 10 years is going to be how we get the data and the partners to continue to do our empirical work. It's going to be a challenge. We need those affiliates. And translational. This is brand new for us. You're going to see Matt Boswell and his team is we're going to try to be a place, and we hope that you take advantage of this, that we take our really high quality research and we want to put it into a format that can help those who make decisions affecting China's growth and the nature of its relation have a better understanding of that. So they don't have to go to the American Political Science Review, or to AER to get this information. Ultimately, we want to make, a series of impact briefs in a series, a big network that we can send these out through. We've been exploring with policymakers in DC and New York City, technology groups in Silicon Valley, businessmen in China. It's hard to do policymakers in China these days, right? We used to be able to send them policy briefs direct. It's hard, but we want to get this into their hands. And it's amazing when we go to them, we've taken these policy briefs and said, do you guys like these? They go, there's nothing like it out there, right? They get dribs and drabs. So this is one of our big things we want to do together. And I'm going to give it back to Hongbin, but before I give it back to Hongbin, I want to say, this is their center. I mean, Alexis and Matt both had their 10th year. They've been at Stanford as long as I've been back here, practically longer than Prashant, and longer than I Ching and Jennifer and now Xue Guang. You've been here forever, when these guys reach out to you, they're part of us. So that's really what we're doing. Hongbin, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah. So what does it mean to be a SCCEI affiliate? Actually, I think we hope that everyone who wants to work on China, who would like to collaborate working on China, will be welcomed by SCCEI. But to start with, we just talk to all the faculty members on campus who are currently working on China, who we know that are working on China, so especially the social scientists. So for the faculty affiliates, you can either work with us. You may get a seed fund from us. You may talk to us about any data availability in China, which we may know. So there are all kinds of opportunities to work together. But I think the most important thing is that I hope that you should see SCCEI as a home for your own research and for collaboration. That's what we hope. So we have a number of so-called flagship research initiatives. This is something we learned from the King Center, actually, from Grant, actually. We thought we have to start with something. So we consulted many faculty members to come up with a number of flagship research initiatives. I'm sure this will grow over time with faculty interest, especially if we recruit some new faculty who are interested in different things. We are going to have some new flagship research initiatives. So let me briefly talk about this, and then we would like the faculties to really introduce their own research. So the first one is called political economy and governance. Basically, this includes faculties from different departments, like some may be in the field of economics, some may be in sociology, like Xue Guang, and some may be in political science or communication, like Jennifer and I Ching. So the health is also a very big issue, and there are so many faculty members, students working on health issues at Stanford. Not only I think in school of medicine like Grant, and also in FSI like Scott, like Karen. There are also economists like Mark Duggan in econ or Shipper who work on health issues. There are so many different issues about China health, and there's so little is known actually to me. Of course, education is a big thing for the China Center. So before we merge the two programs, actually, one is the China program from the King Center. The other is RIP program at FSI. And RIP is focused on rural education. I think Scott has made it really successful in the past 10 years. I think it's one of the most successful projects on China at Stanford. Of course, human capital is such an important issue and continue to be, I think, one of the most important issues for China in the next decade, 2 decades.
Yeah, let me just say one thing, Hongbin, and because people ask me, is REAP going to be still around? So think of these flagship initiatives, right? Governance and environment, and then health and education over here. We're going to have a sticky sign. So, you know, the people who work on that are going to have SCCEI uniforms, but they're going to have a hat that says REAP. So the REAP program will still be here, but it'll be completely sort of taken over. It'll be inside SCCEI. So that's I get that question asked to me a lot.
So population is another very big issue. You know, China started population control policies from the early 70s. I think Grant has a very good paper on this. And then later the one-child policy in 1979. So at that time, policymakers in China thought the fast-growing population would cause serious economic and social issues or crisis in China. Today, China indeed is facing a serious demographic crisis. It's not too many people. It's because the younger generations stop having children. So this will be a very important issue for China in the next maybe 30 years or half a century. So we are going to have a few colleagues talking about this today. And environmental issues is another challenge for China. As you all know, that Stanford is planning to start a new school of sustainability. Actually, we have several colleagues actually on campus working on China's environmental issues. I know, I mean, Gretchen and I have a project on China's how environment affects health. There are also other people like economics, like Barry Golder, Gretchen Daly, engineer, who studied China's sustainability and environmental issues. Gretchen and Larry won't be here today, but they have recorded their conversation. We are going to show their conversation later. This is the last one. Finally, so firm and productivity. This is, I think there's a similar initiative I think in the King Center. So we also have a group of faculty members across different departments at Stanford studying China's firms and productivity. People including people in GSB, economics, like Nick Bloom, Pete Flannel, and people in FSI actually, even including like Jean and myself also work on this issue. So I'm collecting big data in China called China Empower Employee Survey. It's a matched firm and worker survey of manufacturing firms actually. So many of us actually have come with us to China, including David here. David came with me to China to visit firms in China. So we hope we can continue with this big survey and provide data for faculty and students work on China. There could be a number of possible future research initiatives. I think this will depend on what kind of people we have actually. Ultimately, it's the faculty members who drive the research project, research initiatives. So of course, we know some issues are very important. So before we could really employ anyone, I don't think we can do it in the next 2 or 3 years. Our hope is to invite some visiting faculties. They can come for a few weeks, a few months, or a year or 2 years, who work on these issues. So we hope to get the best people in the world to work with us on these important issues such as trade, consumer welfare, technology, IO, U.S.-China relations, and also other things. So now I think we are going to have some little panel discussions from different research groups.
Yes. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna move through these. We're gonna look at some of these research initiatives, but hear from the people who are gonna do them, right? Like I don't work on governance, and Hongbin works on everything, but I don't work on political, on environment or demography. So we're going to hear from Stanford faculty that are doing this. And we're going to hopefully keep these short and sweet, but you're going to see, I think, the richness of who we're trying to collaborate with. So first, in the political economy and governance, we have our big three. Jennifer, you're assistant professor in communications department. I hope to have to adjust that title really soon, and is one of the most prolific researchers on campus. So Jennifer, what are you doing, and sort of, how do you do it?
Yeah. First, just thanks so much for having me. It's so exciting to see everyone here. So in terms of my work, it really centers around the question of what shapes China's information environment and how does this influence the public, both in terms of public attitudes as well as public behaviors. And also in the process of studying what forces shape this information environment, I'm interested in what we can learn about the priorities of the Chinese government as a result. So a few quick examples. Right now, one project I'm working on looks at what public sentiment looked like on Weibo when COVID first emerged in China. So a year ago, unimaginable, weird. A year ago, this time in China, what was public sentiment like? To what extent was there censorship of public expression or fabrication of online content? Another new project looks at how Chinese state media has managed to become so successful on Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. So if you look at some of the most liked accounts, most followed accounts and liked posts, they come from Chinese state media outlets. How did this come to be? And another project kind of on the other side of things, it's a joint project with Yiqing. We look at kind of the outcome of this information environment. We are doing a longitudinal study of Chinese college students, both in China and in the US. We want to see over time, how are they changing? How are these cohorts different from one another?
This is all fantastic. How do you collect data from China? This sounds to be very difficult, right?
They're constantly changing challenges, I would say. So a lot of my data for a long time has come from social media. So Weibo data, some Weixin public account data, Douyin data. And so a lot of those we can collect remotely. Obviously, as the platforms change or as regulations change, we have to adjust how exactly we're going about that data collection. The other side of the data comes from surveys. So these are public opinion surveys that sometimes we do with partners in China, other times we're doing online surveys. So on the survey side, I think that's where things are tightening up more. And it remains to be seen how much we can continue to do going forward.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. I mean, she could go on forever. So, and it's all really high quality, very interesting, and important information. We've already shared a few of your seminars you've given lately with the staff of Mitt Romney, who's the head of the minority member of the subcommittee, and they say, we want the impact briefs from Jennifer. So, and that's actually true. So true story. So Xue Guang, you're professor of sociology, senior fellow at FSI, past chair of the Soc department. What are you doing and what problems are you working on these days? I know your research agenda has changed over time, but what are you doing these days?
Well, thanks, Scott. I want to first congratulate the launch of the Sky. I think this is really a great occasion for us, not only on campus, but I think will have huge impact on the entire field. So congratulations. I'm very glad to be part of it. Now, back to your question, my own research focuses on Chinese institutions and organizations, especially the Chinese government as a bureaucracy. I'm now conducting a lot of research around this theme. The first one is a study of the inner working of the Chinese bureaucracy by tracing the personnel management practice and personnel flow in a large multi-layered bureaucracy in the entire Chinese province with tens of thousands of officials over a 30-year period of time. So I'm interested in the interconnectedness among these offices and different sectors through the flow of these personnel and the social network that are cultivated around these patterns. So that's my first line of research. My second one is based on field work to observe and make sense of the local officials' behaviors. And for this project, I rely on my network of colleagues in China because they are conducting field work all the time. So whenever I go to China for my research, I will join their field work and I will participate in observations and in interviews. And of course, as you know, for the last year, this line of research has been seriously disrupted. But I'm hoping that I can resume this soon. I think China has changed so much and so quickly in the last few years. We really need to update our knowledge about what is going on in China and what is going on inside the Chinese bureaucracy. So yeah, very exciting occasion. I congratulate you and look forward to working with you all.
So Xue Guang, so what's the most difficult thing to work on China? Do you find it difficult to collaborate with people there or something else?
It used to be very, very easy relationship because a lot of colleagues you can work with. I have an informal network of colleagues. We meet regularly in China and I sponsor scholars to visit here. So we have constant exchange of ideas, information about research projects. But I think I have to say things getting a little bit challenging in recent years. And we have to figure out ways, as Scott and Kongbi used to talk about earlier, that I hope the center will help us to facilitate this kind of scholar exchange, to facilitate these collaborative relationships in the future.
It's going to be a big challenge. That's for sure. But Shuiguang does it as well as anyone. If, the key, Shuiguang, is work on babies in Western rural China that nobody even knows about, right? And then nobody cares. And but for these kind of issues you're working on. How about I Ching? I Ching is probably our newest empirical master at Stanford in the political science department. We stole him from UCSD, Barry, sorry. But I Ching, what are you doing these days? I know you're doing a lot with Jennifer and a lot of other stuff too.
Sure, I'm glad to see many familiar faces here, a lot of friends and former teachers of mine. So my name is Yiqing Xu. I'm an assistant professor in political science, where I teach PhD and undergraduate students research methods. My primary research field is applied statistics and comparative politics and Chinese politics. Like most researchers here, I apply statistical methods and data to topics related to China, especially its political side. Jen has mentioned that we have been working on topics related to understanding ideology, public preferences of the Chinese public, of college students in both US and China, as well as media strategies of the Chinese regime. So in terms of data collection, we've been using social media data, newspaper data from traditional media. We also have been using survey data. We work very closely with my former colleagues at UCSD, where we launched a China from ground up survey. It's like a monthly survey, but also work with a couple of colleagues in Chinese universities. We mentioned the issue that conducting survey research is difficult for researchers based at US universities. So collaboration with colleagues in China becomes increasingly important if we want to get real good household or even online survey data. So those universities, including Zhongshan University, Peking University, a couple other universities, they've been incredibly helpful. I'm also interested in understanding the mechanics of the vast Chinese bureaucracy related to Xueguang's work. Ruixue and I, Ruixue is here. Actually, we were working on a paper understanding the career trajectories of Chinese Communist Party officials.
So, Yiqing, so I know you are very active in social media. I heard over the past weekend. So Chenggang gave a talk in your very special group. Unfortunately, I'm not in the group, so I cannot go there. So can you share with us who are the audience and what do you share with them actually?
Okay, I'm very privileged to have Chenggang. Chenggang is here today to give a talk to the Chinese student, mostly Chinese student in Chinese. The audience are mostly PhD students in economics and social sciences in China and in the US. The other day, Chenggang talked about his how he came up with the ideas for his several papers and his philosophy of doing research, which received a lot of very, very good feedback from the students. So we did this. I launched a Zoom meeting, and I put out those ads on social media, and a lot of people joined. And I also made a podcast based on the Zoom meeting, and then reach out to a couple thousand more students. But thank you, Chenggang, again. Incredibly great.
Yes, yeah. Chenggang Xu is just an institution of himself, and we're actually very much looking forward to having him as one of our first Sky visitors. And with the pandemic, there's so many details to work out, but we're going to have him here local. at least a lot on Zoom. So so thanks, I-Ching. Let's move on to the health initiative. The health initiative is, we went back and forth of who we wanted. We have Sean Sylvia at UNC, who did his PhD here with us. He's a Maryland PhD, but has been a prolific, he's a member of REAP from way back and is one of our initiative heads. But the other person who's on campus here is Steve Luby. I listed everybody's affiliations here. Steve goes on for half a page. He's a professor of medicine, infectious diseases. He has a PhD and an MD. He's associate dean of the Global Health Research Program in School of Medicine, senior fellow at Woods, at institutes, and many other places. Steve did probably some of the most sensitive work that we've ever done together up in the Tibetan areas of Sichuan. But Steve, tell us how you view sort of this center and your research and how we sort of can collaborate. Steve is the expert of South Asia, Africa, Latin America, et cetera. So Steve.
Well, thanks very much, Scott. I mean, I think part of what attracted me to REAP and so attracts me to SCCEI is your notion that China is not just this wealthy juggernaut, that there is this whole large population that is in fact facing the problems of poverty. And this is really big for China, but it's also really big for the world, because right now there are more poor people living in middle-income countries than there are poor people living in low-income countries. So thinking about how do we deal with this situation when you have an elite in an economy that's working, but a bunch of people who are left out. And I'm a communicable disease epidemiologist, so infectious disease and economics actually walk quite close together, because infectious diseases, the epidemiology of infectious diseases overlaps on the epidemiology of poverty. So poverty leads to infectious diseases, but infectious diseases also contribute to poverty. So up there in rural Sichuan province, we continue to do work on neurocysticercosis. This is a parasite that goes from pigs to people, and then it goes into people's brains and expands there. And it's a very nasty thing to have. And we show that it's common among school children there. And we've developed compelling evidence that this is transmitted from person to person within the schools. And so trying to work to break these political economy difficulties and reduce the transmission of disease. So I'm really grateful to SCCEI. China has not been my area of interest, and if it weren't for Alexis and Scott and people whom they could point us to, we would never have been able to put the team together in order to advance this work. So I'm really excited about ongoing collaborations with SCCEI.
So Steve, so we have never met, but I have heard your work. So how do you think SCCEI can help you for your research? And how can you collaborate with social scientists on China research?
Yeah, I think social science is really crucial, because a lot of what we do in epidemiology is look to understand the pathway of transmission and then say, how might we be able to intervene to break this? And so, for example, why are schools underinvesting in water sanitation facilities? Why don't they keep their latrines clean? That's actually a social science question. And then, given that political economy of that situation, what are the levers by which we can change? So I feel that as we work to leverage epidemiology into public health, which is what actually we're all about, that it's really important that we walk with social scientists. And so having both the access and the social science expertise is actually really critical to be able to deliver on mission.
Yes, Steve, Steve and his team, he brings half of the School of Medicine, or the epidemiology part of it. We've gone together up to Sichuan a number of times, and the social science side of us learn a lot, and we've had a great time. So thank you, Steve. Now I'm going to jump over to the other side of the other people who have a REAP hat on and Sky uniform on education, and Prashant's going to share a little about. But there's other who we could have. Rick Hanashek is in the audience today, I think, and Eric is all of our mentors, right? And we've been working very close to him, and other people in the School of Education, the dean, Martin, Carnoy, everybody's been super supportive there, and it's been sort of, we have a lot of momentum in this direction. So Prashant is a new associate professor in the School of Education. I guess it's already been almost a year now, Prashant, but we've worked together for more than 10 years. He's a senior fellow at FSI at CEPR. Prashant, tell us a little about your work.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's just great to be here and to be under the cardinal red sky. Just have worked with so many of you over the years, and I'm really happy that it's coming together as a center. As a lot of you know, that REAP has worked a lot on issues of human capital development, especially in rural areas, trying to address the rural-urban gap in educational outcomes. And so we continue to work a lot on that. We started from sort of the traditional types of measures like conditional cash transfers, information and counseling for students to not drop out of school, working with teachers to train them and to bring incentives and to evaluate each and every one of those initiatives to try to improve the lot of rural people. Right now, most recently, we're working on educational technology, and this is accelerated actually after the pandemic because of just the huge interest in online learning and other solutions that can perhaps give rural people opportunities that urban people have in terms of education. So, higher quality teachers, better tutoring after school. And so a couple of the recent projects that we're trying is to use computer assisted learning, especially advanced forms of it like adaptive learning, to see how that impacts students' opportunities to improve their chances to go to college, and also to look at how that impacts students from different types of backgrounds, especially students that aren't doing as well, even in rural areas. So that's one of the areas we're working on. At the upper end of the distribution, we've also been working a lot in colleges, working and seeing especially how well are Chinese universities doing at improving skills of students. What are the factors that lead to improvements in skills? And so we have a large comparative project right now comparing China versus India, Russia, and the United States to look at those types of skill gains.
Hi, Prashant. So I got to know Prashant when I was working in China, actually. So I was so amazed by seeing Prashant, Stanford alumni, Indian American, speaking perfect Chinese, living in Beijing. So I was so amazed when he was working in Beijing, actually. So my question for you is, Prashant, I know you also work on other countries like Russia, Brazil, right? So compared to those countries, what is the challenge working on China? What's the easiest things working on China?
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things in China is we've had this huge, great network of collaborators to work with. I think we see a lot of, local collaborators that are bright and really want to use empirical research and to try to influence policy and understand what's happening, especially in rural areas. So that's been, I think, a big advantage, of doing that in China itself. I think recently, there is, as I think all of us have been feeling, a little bit more resistance, I think on the education side, especially to exploring, sort of what's happening in China. I think policymakers are a little bit sensitive to certain types of research. And so that, hasn't been there so much in other countries like India, Brazil, and Russia right now. But I'm really hopeful. I think, China has this great future. We see all of this potential, not just in the urban areas, but also the rural areas, to really lift up the population in terms of its human capital.
Yes, yes, I couldn't say better. Yeah, that's I think that that's what we hope to do. I mean, Hongbin and I Ching and almost everybody you've heard talking today has those kind of contacts, and we want to be that sort of platform that we introduce other experts, the Steve Lubies of the world. We want a lot more Steves, and okay, let's jump over to demography real quick. We have two demographers. They could be in the health group. We had a long conversation with Karen. She'll speak second. Am I demography or health? And then she taught me what was the difference between demography and health. So thank you in advance, Karen. Grant Miller is going to be share with us first. He's professor in the School of Medicine, senior fellow of FSI CEPR, former director of King Center, and was a huge help in having us setting up this center. We probably wouldn't be here without Grant. So Grant, tell us a little about your research, or how your future research, how this might work with you.
Well, thanks very much. It's really exciting to join for this speed dating session, and I hope we'll continue more of this in a bit more depth another time. I wanted to first just quickly echo something that Steve said, which is that some of the people joining today are scholars that have focused primarily and very deeply on work with through collaborations in China. There are other people, and I think this is a huge opportunity for SCCEI, who have done some work on China or may be interested in doing work through new collaborations on China, but haven't traditionally, and SCCEI really creates an opportunity and a platform for that to happen. I guess I put myself a bit more into that camp, but that can really leverage a lot of what Stanford has to offer that hasn't previously been focused on China. So my work focuses on the economics of health and demographic change, and I'm not going to try to define the boundaries between those. And I guess there are two areas I quickly call out. One is work to understand more thoroughly the causes of China's rapid and very profound demographic change over the past 50 years. And building on that and looking forward, work on the important policy challenges of how now that is going to be managed. So China, as you all know, experienced a famous and very rapid decline in fertility. So now as its population ages, how will public policies manage these new challenges in ways that both maintain economic growth and provide for the vast and rapidly expanding needs of a booming elderly population? So already you can see that health and demography are meeting in those sets of issues. The other one I would call out very quickly is work on the very complex issues and the design of healthcare policies that can adequately meet both rural and urban needs, if you will. So for example, rural areas are now really confronting a pretty alarming rise in chronic diseases that are commonly associated with urban populations. So there's a real challenge of how can China's healthcare systems be structured in a way that will both address those, but also not neglect other unfinished business, such as undernutrition, sort of a banner area of work historically for REAP. So let me stop there and turn things over to Karen, but I, again, just want to reiterate, Hongbin and Scott, how grateful we are to you both for your leadership in setting up SCCEI and making it possible to have deeper collaborations with immediate policy relevance in China, both with technical bodies like the Chinese Academy of Sciences and in universities that range from Hong Kong and Beijing to the Northwest.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. I just got that we wouldn't be here without Grant. Actually, I should say I wouldn't be here without Grant, because Grant recruited me to Stanford, actually, so a few years ago. Thanks, Grant. Now we turn to Karen.
Yes, good. Going to Karen, exactly. And Karen, let me just say quickly, Karen also has a long list of titles. These health and demography guys, right? They have, but she's the director of the Stanford Asia Health policy program. She's done that for quite a while. It's a fabulous program. And we look for lots of collaborative opportunities in the future. She's also the deputy director of APARC now, and senior fellow at FSI. Karen.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, I know we have limited time, so I just want to say hello and thanks to Sky. I also think it's a fabulous opportunity to focus on this empirical work, and wonderful to see many friends and colleagues here in the call. Just to reiterate, I am also a health economist and work across several of these areas. So to put it in a nutshell, maybe my collaboration with colleagues in China could be considered at the nexus of health, demography, and productivity, if you'd like, a sort of organizational innovation for healthy aging. And I work with colleagues, mostly academics and other economists in China, but others with the China CDC, provincial CDC. Rather than going to any detail, I'll just maybe share a link about some recent research to give you an idea of the kinds of data sets we try to put together for that kind of work. Jointly with colleagues, this is with the Zhejiang CDC and with two Stanford economics students, one who's graduated, one on the market now, and that kind of research. Working with colleagues also on demography, we'll have James Young talking at a webinar in March on our book on demography and innovation across Asia, and then a book with Fudan Professor Jingyi Jia talking about some of my other research, which is comparing health and long-term care to other aspects of public and private sector in China. So I look forward to hearing about everybody else's work and to collaborating with you all in the future. Thank you.
So Karen, I want to ask the same question Hongbin asked of Prashant, because so Karen's one of these people who's a China expert, but she's also Asia. She knows a lot of. So what are the strengths and difficulties of working in China?
Well, I think you all know some of the challenges having to do with language and so on. In the areas that I work on, there are a lot of publicly available data sets that are household data sets, but if you're interested in the supply side, you know, Hongbin has this wonderful data, but it doesn't include hospitals and healthcare organizations, right? So it's difficult to put that kind of data together. So I gave some examples of how we try to work with colleagues in China. I hosted visiting scholars from China, health economists and related fields, interested in a specific policy question, and then we try to work with them to sort of develop a data gathering and impact strategy. As you know, RCTs are great, but you can't sort of randomize ownership of hospitals in China, right? So you have to have other empirical designs, and that's what I work on.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think what we have now is, I'll guarantee we have 7 minutes left, and then we'll say goodbye. We're going to play a quick 7 minutes and 22 seconds. This is Larry Goulder, professor in Department of Economics and director of Stanford Environment Energy Policy, and then Gretchen Daly, who just gave a Sky seminar. It was terrific about her work in China. It's incredible how much she's done and how much policy impact she's had. So they're both teaching today. So you got 7 minutes, 22 seconds, and then we'll say goodbye to everyone.
Hi, everyone. So let me first introduce Larry. So Larry Goulder is the Suzhou Ishihara Professor of Environmental and Resource Economics in the Department of Economics. So he is, I think, the top economist studying environmental issues. So Larry, could you share us about your research on China's environmental issues?
Oh, thank you very much, Hongbin, and thank you also, Scott. I'm just delighted, first of all, I want to say, to see the opening of the center. And I'm really looking forward to contributing to the center's efforts. Glad to be a part of it. And in collaboration with other scholars affiliated with the center, what I hope to do is promote work on efforts in the general area of environment and sustainability. The emphasis, I think this reflects the center's general focus, is to focus on critical contemporary problems to use data, be data-driven, empirical, and have high policy relevance. That very much accords with my interests, so it's a good matchup. I'll give you a brief example in terms of my own work. I've been focusing, among other things, on China's very innovative and nationwide program to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, the principal greenhouse gas. It's a program that's just getting started, and I think it has important both implications for both China and the world more broadly. And I'll be collaborating, or am collaborating, with scholars at Tsinghua and other leading universities. But the only other thing I would mention is that this is part of a broader effort in the area of environment sustainability, where Gretchen and I, other scholars at Stanford, in fact, also a postdoctoral scholar we'll be bringing in, we'll be expanding our efforts to look at a range of environmental problems besides, in addition to the ones that I'm currently working on and the ones that Gretchen the many ones that Gretchen's working on. So happy to be a part of this. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Larry, it's yeah, thanks, Larry, very much. And now we'll jump over to the other environment and sustainability flagship initiative superstar, Gretchen Daly, who's a professor in biology and the director. I think everyone knows the Stanford's Natural Capital Project. And you know, I don't think there's any of our affiliates who have had as deep and widespread affiliation with Chinese scholars in the area of research and natural resources, very broad, from social science all the way to the deep science. And I know that she's loved by her collaborators in China and have had a big policy impact. So Gretchen, after that, you don't need to say anything.
You've gone way over the top.
Tell us a little about your research, Gretchen.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Hongbin. And I have to say, actually, so much of how I got started was influenced by Larry. When he was a beginning professor at Stanford, I was a graduate student, and we did several papers together. Actually, back then, we worked together in a couple of books, and I'd say the work that he's really developed provides the foundation for so much of what I'm doing very collaboratively with many others in China. And yeah, the basic idea is somehow to help foster this dramatic transformation that all countries need, and that China is really leading toward green and inclusive pathways of development in all those dimensions that you referenced, you know, economic and social, in terms of health, the various outcomes we want to secure human well-being, as well as the well-being of the planet. And so in China, I've been working closely with people on the science, trying to understand where and how much we need to protect or restore of nature to secure livelihoods, health, and all of the fundamental benefits we need to maintain human activity and well-being. And then we work very closely in planning, policy, and finance, trying to align all of these in order to support this transformation. And along in that, we're working closely with people in communities, people in cities, to understand how livelihoods are affected by these policies designed to open up better pathways, and also understand how, you know, livelihood constraints really affect what is possible. And then finally, we're working to track progress with new metrics, such as gross ecosystem product that runs parallel, it's designed parallel to GDP, and tracks the, you know, generation of goods and services from ecosystems and their contribution to society, you know, and helps guide investments in, you know, places and people, the land stewards, to deliver on producing these benefits, as well as all of the basic commodities that are already a big part of the economy. So anyway, across a range of science arenas in planning, policy, and finance, we're working with a wide array of people, and very excited to be able to connect now in the center, and very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
If you really want to learn more about what we think, sort of research from this center can be, watch the recordings of Gretchen's recent seminar that she gave, our second SCCEI seminar that was ever given. And then Larry gave a seminar last fall, and it just lays out research that's focused on very important contemporary economic issues and problems in China and the world. It's data-based and model-driven, and the highest quality research, and it's done collaborative. So thank you guys both.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everyone. And we look forward to working with you. And Hongbin, you want to say the last?
Thank you, everyone, for coming. So just to let you know that we're going to have a seminar. So we already started seminar series from last fall. In the next week, Rachel is going to give a talk next week. And then follow that will be Jean, our colleague. And then on March 30th, we're going to have the first big public event joined with the King Center. So Steve Chu will be our speaker on China and US collaborations on climate change. So I hope to see you, to everyone here in this event.